friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time, and I'm here today for another this and that. This is my regular Monday routine now, putting these videos out. And if you're new to my channel, what these are a weekly vlog that I do, letting you know what's going on this week, videos that will be coming out real soon to lead you back to old videos showing how I do some of the various things I talk about, to give updates on ongoing projects, and to answer some questions that may have come in through the past week. So let's get started on the topics of today. So you may have just recently seen the video that came out on my cough, cold, and flu prevention / remedy syrup. And I don't call it elderberry syrup because even though I use elderberries in mine, you can change all that up, take the elderberries out, and because I put in a whole bunch more stuff than just elderberries. So I'll go ahead and link to that video recipe down below, and under that recipe I also have a link to the full written recipe plus the photos that I used in that video. And so with that in mind, that's just one of the things that we do to help boost our immune system. We don't do it all the time, only when we know there's a lot of crud going around, or we've been around people that might have been ill, then we might start taking it on a daily basis, usually just in the morning, sometimes twice a day. So far we haven't been sick in many years with any kind of virus, at least not that I know of, and if we have, we've had little to no symptoms. But I do like to mix things up. So the other thing I do is make different types of tea for us to drink in the evening before we go to bed. And one of our favorites is peppermint, which is also a good antiviral. And then I also like to make some spice teas using some of that same stuff I use in that syrup, the cinnamon, the cloves, the ginger, and the star anise and the astragalus and red pepper flakes. And then another one I really like, especially when the herb's coming in fresh, is thyme tea. My thyme is really starting to slow down, but one thing I love about calendula flowers is that they will keep blooming. They'll slow down considerably as the weather gets cold, but they will keep blooming until you get either snow or it just totally freezes over. That's when they finally quit. So if you live in a place that never freezes over or gets any snow, you can have calendula that will keep blooming through the year. We don't get snow very much here. We do occasionally, but it does freeze here. So anyway, my calendula is still going strong. I have quite a bit dehydrated up, so now I'm starting to make nightly teas out of this. Tonight I'm going to use just calendula flowers, which is also a great immune booster and antiviral. And last night I made it with a mixture of the thyme and calendula, which was okay. I prefer thyme when I use it in a tea. I'm finding I like it best just by itself. I've mixed it with other things. I've mixed it with rosemary. It was, again, okay. Rosemary is also a great antiviral. But tonight I want to try to see how the calendula flowers taste all by themselves as a tea, especially since these are going to be what's still growing and giving me fresh flowers for a few more months. And just remember, any of the herbs that you have coming in fresh, go ahead and use them fresh in teas, and then dehydrate whatever you can up for the rest of the year, and then you can use those in teas. Okay, moving on. So my vanilla bottle that I keep in the kitchen is just about empty. I always just keep those same beans in there. Those ones go back a long time. But I have my Perpetual vanilla extract that, thanks to Mary's Nest, I started a couple years ago. I think it was in 2019 that I originally started it. Now when I started this, I decided to go ahead and experiment, and I did 1/3 glycerin, 1/3 homemade wine, and then 1/3 spiced rum. Now when it comes to most of my extracts now that I use for flavoring, I like to use a blend of raw honey and homemade wine. The homemade wine makes it cheaper, and the raw honey adds more flavor and nutritional benefits, whether it be for a medicinal or a flavored extract, doesn't matter. But when it comes to vanilla, I'm finding I like best using a spiced rum. You can use either the Kirkland brand or the Captain Morgan's is also very excellent, mixed with honey. 3 parts rum to 1 part honey for my solvent works pretty good. So let's say you're doing a whole cup of your solvent. That means you're going to use 3/4 cup spiced rum to 1/4 cup of the raw honey. And then double, triple, quadruple that as you need. But when you're doing a perpetual vanilla extract, the great thing about this is you can get a lot more out of your vanilla beans and make it last for a lot longer. So what we do is we take out what we need to fill whatever bottle or jar that we're using in the kitchen. And since that jar is kind of big and very wide, it's easier for me to go ahead. I had already tried, and just like I thought, I still ended up spilling it. So I'm going to put this in a measuring cup here to top it off that way. I should have just put in the wider funnel that I have, the one that I usually use for my winemaking. But anyway, there we go. So now that's all topped off and ready to go, and it smells wonderful. And one of the reasons I like to use the raw honey is not only does that help break up some of that strong alcohol flavor you'll get, and then adds a little sweetness to it too. So what I'm going to do is top this mostly off with the rum. I'm not even going to measure it out. And I'm going to add a couple of tablespoons of honey. I might go ahead and put in a little bit more rum. I don't like it to be too sweet, especially since a lot of things you're using it in is already going to have some sweetness in it anyway. And actually that looks pretty good. I'll just go ahead and put in a little bit more. So what I'm going to do now is just put this lid down. You could stick a long chopstick in there and stir it up. I'm just going to go ahead and put that lid on and shake it. And the honey will dissolve in time, especially for as long as it takes me to go through an 8-ounce bottle of vanilla. It'll be well dissolved in there by the time I get back to it. So when you start your vanilla extract, if you're doing it this way, I don't remember how many vanilla beans I put in there. What I'll do is I'll link to Mary's video that she did on, because I haven't done one specifically on this, so you can see what she did and how many vanilla beans she used in hers. And anyway, like I said, when I started that, I did the 3 different parts and decided I wanted to switch the glycerin to honey and do away with the homemade wine because the spiced rum adds a better flavor. So as I've been going, I've just been only adding the raw honey and the spiced rum to that. So yeah, you just put all your vanilla beans in there, a whole bunch of them, and get that going. And then you're going to want to let it sit for about 2 months. The longer the better to really pull out more flavor out of those beans. But 2 months should be your minimum. Some people will say 4 weeks. Any of my extracts or oil infusions, I always do a minimum of 2 months. Let's talk a little bit about coconut oil. Now I have an old video, I don't know how old it is, maybe it's only a couple years old, that I did on natural dental care. I'm going to be doing an update to that. And one of the things that I wanted to remind people, I have several different tooth powder recipes out there. I'll link to my favorite one out of the 4 different ones, which is number 3. I'll link to that one down below. That's what I have in here. And I do like using a tooth powder, but you can make it a toothpaste by simply adding coconut oil into that. Coconut oil is great for general oral health care. So brushing with just plain coconut oil will actually do a lot for your teeth. And a lot of you have probably heard of oil pulling. You can use any kind of oil really that's good healthy oil. I still recommend coconut oil above all else. One thing I found with using coconut oil is that whether you brush with it or you just use it as oil pulling, I do both, and I'll explain that in a minute, is that it is really helpful at removing the tartar, that calculus that builds up on your teeth. That works better than anything, even better than a tooth powder itself. So every so often I do like to mix things up, and I like both for different reasons. Again, you can mix the two together, but I like keeping them separate. And what I do when I really want to get a really good thorough cleaning on the tartar, I mean, they have their own separate benefits, is I will just take my toothbrush, because these are my own containers. Patrick has his own, and I'll scrape a little bit of the coconut oil out. Sometimes I'll brush with it by itself. And then I'll brush for a long time, like 10, 15 minutes, maybe longer. Sometimes I'll just remove the toothbrush and then just do the oil pulling for the rest of the time. And then another thing I like to do is get a little coconut oil on there and then dip it into my powder and brush that way. Or follow up the coconut oil brushing with this, because this will kind of help remove some of that excess greasiness in your mouth if you don't like the way that feels. Because I don't go to the dentist anymore if I can help it. I used to go every 6 months to get a cleaning done. I have found that simply by just doing the good natural methods keeps my teeth clean, keeps the tartar buildup down. I don't have to go in for a cleaning every 6 months, especially now that insurance won't even cover it anymore like they used to. So it's just not worth the time and money for me to do that when I can do just as good a job here at home. When I started doing the coconut oil pulling, I've actually had chunks of tartar after I did that for a few days actually come off of my teeth just from the oil pulling alone. So I highly recommend it. Now, another question that I get quite frequently when people go back and they watch any of my videos, especially anything where I'm showing how I'm vacuum sealing nuts into jars, and they kind of freak out about that. Oh, I heard you're not supposed to do that because of, guess what? Botulism, the common boogeyman that's associated with any kind of home food preservation. What I'm going to do is link back to the old video I did about botulism, where I actually looked at the real numbers of botulism infections and what causes it, and one of the lowest ones on the list is home preserved foods. It's real. You still want to practice safe food preservation methods, but it's not something you should be so afraid of, because you're more likely to get botulism, salmonella, or E. coli from prepackaged foods, be they fresh foods like salads or canned stuff or whatever that you buy at the store, than the things that you preserve at home on your own. So let me give you an example. First of all, I've been vacuum sealing nuts of all kinds into jars for years, and they're still good. In fact, the ones that I vacuum seal usually end up being better than the ones that I just put a lid on and forgot about and didn't vacuum seal. We haven't got botulism from any of them. And here's something I want to remind people, because I think people sort of forget about this stuff when they hear that, oh, you're not supposed to vacuum seal fats at all because you'll get botulism. Well, let's remember the old Planters commercial. Planters peanuts, they're vacuum sealed. A lot of the nuts you buy in the stores in jars are vacuum sealed. Nuts of all kinds, vacuum sealed. And I remember that whole thing. Planters did their commercial. I don't know if they're still doing it, but years ago, you know, that whole thing about you opening that jar and hearing that, well, that means it was vacuum sealed. So if it's safe for them to do it at the store, and no, the equipment they use when it comes to that is not going to have any difference on preventing botulism in your nuts than if you just vacuum seal it yourself at home. This is one I did last year. I opened it up to take a taste test of the walnuts, and they're not rancid. That's the other question I get a lot. Won't they go rancid? I've only had one jar of Brazil nuts that I started to get into that I found were rancid, but it was just the one, and I kind of freaked out and started freezing them after that because I didn't want them to go to waste. And you will know, by the way, you will know when they're rancid because they'll have that rotten taste to them. And these were only just kind of at that where they were starting to get rancid. And so I started freezing all my Brazil nuts, but I'm thinking there shouldn't be any difference between the Brazil nuts and any other nuts because they're all high in fat. So my guess is, just like what happens especially with Brazil nuts, I might have just had a bad batch was all, and that can happen. And I should have tasted them before I put them in the jar. But other than that one jar, still years later, so far, raw or roasted, every jar I've opened has been good. So I'm going to re-vacuum seal this. Obviously I have to use a chamber for this because the food saver tops won't work on here. But yeah, I'm just going to reseal that up. I just wanted to taste it for this video so I can let you know that they're still good. No issues with those. And then the other thing was, last week I was talking about making the tomato flakes. And so I'm just about done filling up this jar. I'm going to do one more batch. Should be able to fill up my tomato flake jar. And if you want to see that this and that video, I'll link to it down below because I do put some pictures and video clips on how I make the tomato flakes and talk about why I do flakes and I don't powder them. There's a very good reason, so check that out. But one of the things I mentioned I wanted to try, since I'm trying to get away from the plastic more and more, and I have these cloth covers that I make for my dehydrator racks, both the ones the non-electric one I use by my wood stove and my electric ones. I did take one of my little vernissage tomatoes here. This is a black vernissage. Love these things. They're great for snacking. So yesterday I did take one and chopped it up and put it on my cloth, and just like I figured would do, no oil or anything needed, they peeled right off. And also, as I figured, it left some stains. I haven't washed this yet, and these stains probably will not wash out unless I bleach it. I'm not concerned about that. As long as I get it clean, And I usually what I'll do is I'll hang them in the sun, and the sun will help bleach them out, and then I don't have to use chlorine in my wash. I never use chlorine in my wash. So that worked really good. So once I get this done, I'll probably go ahead and start chopping up some of the rest of the tomatoes coming in and then just dehydrating them, because those are really good. The pieces like that are super great for adding into soups or sauces, anything where you actually want the chunks of tomato in there rather than the flakes like I have here, which is good for making a sauce out of, just like you would your powder. All right, one more thing I wanted to mention is that there are certain things that here on my channel I do not talk about in depth, because not only is that not necessarily what I want my channel to be about, but it's also because you have to be very careful what you say and what you talk about if you want to stay on YouTube, or if you want to keep your video up, or if you at least want your video to be monetized. I know sometimes when I mention things in videos, I kind of make it sound like, huh, isn't that interesting? And that's in order to get people to think. It doesn't mean that I don't actually look at all the information and from all different places and evaluate that and look into the actual facts, ingredients of certain things that they're wanting to inject into our bodies and stuff. I look into all this stuff, believe me, but I just don't talk about all that. So what I might do for my first video over at Rumble, since I still haven't put one on over there, is I think I'm going to go into depth at some point about some of these different issues. And if people are liking that and wanting to hear more of my opinions, as well as what I've learned and the actual facts, that will be the place you can find out once I get into that. I don't know how soon I'll do it. I'm hoping maybe this sometime in this next week I'll get something put together and up there, but I can't promise it. But remember, if you haven't subscribed over at my Rumble channel, I'll go ahead and link to it down below. I have no content at the moment I'm shooting this video yet. It was only set up to be a backup place just in case I needed it, because I want to keep as much stuff here on YouTube as I can. But as with many other channels, sometimes we have to branch out to other places if we want to talk about certain sensitive topics that can't be spoke of here. So that's just to let you know. So if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead, even if there's no content on there yet. And that way, once I do finally put something, you'll know. Okay, well, I hope you enjoy my this and that for the week, and don't forget to check out the links in the description box down below. Thanks for watching. Take care, and God bless.